coming on the air with some sad breaking news, breaking royal tradition, blending families, bonding over vegetables. Princess Beatrice may keep out of the royal spotlight. Death, drama, and a romantic snub fit for a king. Royal life ain't all palaces and parties, and nobody knows this better than Princess Beatrice. Could everything Princess Beatrice believed about her family be a lie? For years she's carried the royal name with quiet pride. The daughter of Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson, always standing gracefully beside her sister, Eugenie. You might recognize royal sisters, Princess Beatrice of York and Princess Eugenie of York, as the dynamic hat-donning duo. But what if the truth written in her DNA tells a completely different story? Whispers began behind palace walls long before the public ever noticed. Old photos resurfaced, timelines didn't quite match, and rumors that once sounded absurd suddenly started to make sense. A single test, a simple strand of DNA, has now thrown everything into question. And when the results came out, insiders say Beatrice broke down in tears, realizing her life might not be what she thought it was. The royal family has chosen silence, but silence, as history shows, always hides something bigger. Could this be the most shocking revelation to hit the British monarchy in decades? Stay with us, because what we're about to uncover may change how you see the royal family forever. The whisper that started it all. It didn't begin with a headline, it began with whispers, soft, uncertain murmurs that slipped through the marble halls of the palace like a cold draft no one could block. Servants lowered their voices. Aides looked away when Beatrice entered the room. Something was changing, something no one dared to name. For months, royal insiders had hinted at a family truth, a secret quietly discussed behind closed doors, only in hushed tones. It wasn't gossip in the usual sense. It was heavier, sharper, the kind of talk that could shake the foundation of even the strongest family. The few who knew anything real stayed silent. Even longtime royal staff, those who'd seen generations rise and fall, refused to comment. At first, people dismissed it. The royals had faced endless scandals, affairs, betrayals. The royal rumor mill is buzzing. Money issues and even feuds between brothers, so what could be new? But this time, the air around the palace felt strange. The atmosphere carried a quiet tension, one that seemed to follow Princess Beatrice and her mother, Sarah Ferguson, everywhere they went. It started subtly. Beatrice noticed glances exchanged between staff, brief pauses in conversation when she entered a room. And then came the unease, a gut feeling that something wasn't quite right. She tried to ignore it at first. After all, she'd been raised to stay composed, to never let emotions rule over reason. But the feeling didn't fade. Friends close to her began noticing small changes, too. Beatrice started revisiting old family albums late at night, staring at pictures of herself as a child, her father's hand on her shoulder, her mother's distant smile. There were moments frozen in time that suddenly didn't make sense anymore. The resemblance she once saw so clearly now felt uncertain. Sources say Beatrice began asking quiet questions, not out of anger, but confusion. Where was Dad during this time? She reportedly asked once, while flipping through a dated photo album. The timelines didn't align. Some stories her mother once told no longer fit. It wasn't suspicion that pushed her. It was something deeper. A daughter's need for clarity, for truth. And then one morning, everything changed. A letter arrived. Plain envelope, no return address. It wasn't sent to a journalist, nor to the palace itself. It was sent directly to one of Beatrix's most trusted advisors, someone who'd been with her for years, known for their loyalty and discretion. Inside was a message that would append everything, a claim that the man she called father might not share her blood. The letter even promised evidence that could confirm her real lineage once and for all. The advisor hesitated before showing it to her, knowing the impact it could have. But when Beatrice read those words, her world tilted. In that moment, the life she'd known, the royal name, the titles, the comfort of certainty began to crumble. And for the first time, Princess Beatrice realized that sometimes the most painful truths aren't shouted in public. They arrive quietly, wrapped in whispers. A mother's secret past. Sarah Ferguson, affectionately known as Fergie, has always been one of the most talked about women in the British monarchy. I've just returned from an extraordinary encounter with Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York. Her red hair, her laughter, her rebellious nature, everything about her stood in contrast to royal formality. But behind the smiles and public appearances, Fergie carried her own share of heartbreak and secrets. During the late 1980s and early 1990s, her marriage to Prince Andrew was rocky, filled with long separations and public scandals. Rumors swirled constantly about affairs, friendships, and private meetings that were never supposed to reach the tabloids. For years, the relationship between Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson has captivated the public. Now, it's reported the couple have rekindled their love, and in what would be a remarkable turn of events. And somewhere during those chaotic years, one man's name kept quietly resurfacing, a close friend, a confidant, someone who shared more than just laughter with the Duchess. He wasn't royal, but he had the charm and warmth that seemed to pull Fergie closer each time. When Beatrice was born in 1988, the world celebrated. She was the sweet princess who seemed to bring hope to a troubled marriage. But behind palace doors, a few insiders noticed something subtle, a resemblance that didn't quite match Prince Andrew's side of the family. Decades later, that quiet observation would come back to haunt everyone, the DNA revelation. It started innocently, a simple ancestry test meant for curiosity. Beatrice, like many others her age, reportedly took a private DNA test, not out of doubt, but fascination. But what began as an innocent search for heritage quickly turned into something unthinkable. According to royal insiders, when the results arrived, they didn't align with the official royal lineage. The markers that should have matched Prince Andrew's family history didn't. At first, she thought it must be an error. She even retested, but the same results came back twice. Beatrice was devastated. The DNA traced her paternal link not to the Duke of York, but to someone else, a name long whispered in royal circles, a man who had once been close to her mother during the most fragile years of her marriage. That moment shattered her. For Beatrice, it wasn't about royal titles or image. It was about identity. The man she'd loved and defended as her father might not share her blood. After all, those close to her say she broke down, unable to speak for hours. And when her mother finally arrived, the silence between them said everything words couldn't. The palace in panic. News like this doesn't stay hidden for long, especially not within the walls of Buckingham Palace. Secrets there move like shadows, quiet but impossible to contain. And when the whispers about Princess Beatrix's DNA began to reach the higher corridors of power, the atmosphere inside the palace shifted almost overnight. Within days, the stillness that usually defined royal mornings turned into quiet chaos. Private meetings were arranged in the early hours. Senior advisors were summoned one after another, slipping through hidden corridors to avoid the press waiting outside the gates. The Royal Communications Office worked late into the night, drafting multiple versions of statements, all carefully worded, all equally unsatisfactory. None were ever released. Each draft was shredded, burned, or locked away in files that might never see daylight. Inside, tension buzzed like electricity. This wasn't gossip about a tabloid photo or a leaked conversation. This was far more dangerous. If confirmed, the revelation could question not only Beatrix's identity, but also the very structure of the royal bloodline. It was the kind of story that could turn public respect into outrage. For a family that built its power on lineage, loyalty, and legacy, nothing was more threatening than a truth that questioned all three. The monarchy had survived wars, divorces, and betrayals, but this was different. This struck at the foundation of who they were. Prince Andrew, already under immense public scrutiny for previous controversies. It's the scandal that's rocked the royal family to its core. Prince Andrew's relationship with convicted Jeffrey Epstein reportedly reacted with disbelief and anger. He was said to have slammed his fist on a desk during a private meeting, demanding to see the DNA evidence for himself. Some sources claimed he refused to believe it, calling it an attack meant to destroy what's left of his reputation. Others suggested his silence afterward was not disbelief, but quiet heartbreak. Sarah Ferguson, Fergie, took the opposite path. Friends close to her described her as protective and heartbroken. She avoided public appearances, canceled interviews, and spent hours speaking privately with Beatrice. Those close to the family say she was torn between two impossible roles, that of a mother trying to protect her daughter and a woman confronting the mistakes of her past. The palace, meanwhile, became a fortress of secrecy. Staff were warned not to discuss unverified personal matters. Phones were checked, emails monitored. Even the most loyal aides began to feel uneasy. It was as if the entire household was holding its breath, waiting for something, anything, to break the silence. But silence only breeds speculation, and speculation in a world obsessed with royal drama spreads faster than truth. Outside, the press began to circle like hawks. Inside, the family tried to hold itself together, though everyone knew the cracks were already visible. History was repeating itself. Another generation of royals caught in the crossfire between duty and truth. And as the walls of Buckingham Palace grew heavier with secrecy, one thing became painfully clear. The louder the silence, the more dangerous the whispers became. The man behind the rumor. So, who is the man being quietly whispered about as Beatrix's real father? He isn't a stranger to the royal world. In fact, his connection to the Duchess of York goes back decades. A respected businessman known for his charm and close friendship with Fergie. He often appeared at private events, fundraisers, and royal functions. The two were seen together frequently during the years when her marriage to Prince Andrew was under strain. At the time, it was brushed off as friendship, but now with DNA results pointing elsewhere, the timeline seems more suspicious. Insiders say Beatrix's DNA shares a near-perfect match with this man's family lineage. While the palace has made no official statement, the resemblance between Beatrice and the man in question has become the subject of intense speculation online. Still, no one, not even the man himself, has confirmed or denied it. For now, the truth lives in silence. But in the age of digital leaks and public transparency, silence rarely lasts forever. Beatrix's silent struggle. To the world, Princess Beatrice still smiles, attending events, supporting charities, and carrying herself with quiet grace. But those who know her say she's changed. In private, she's become more reflective, more withdrawn. The weight of discovering such a truth isn't something one can easily carry, especially when your life has always belonged to the public. Friends describe her as heartbroken yet determined. Fascinators or not, this royal's gone global. Here's what everyone ignores about Princess Beatrice. Determined to protect her sister Yuji, determined to protect her mother, and determined not to let her identity be reduced to a headline. There are moments, however, when the emotion breaks through. During a recent public appearance, photographers captured Beatrice wiping her eyes, a quiet sign that the storm inside her hasn't passed. What hurts her most isn't the gossip. It's the thought that the people she loves might now be judged by something she never chose. A simple DNA test may have revealed her truth, but it also took away the peace she once had. The royal image at stake. The British royal family has endured almost everything that could test the strength of an institution. Wars, abdications, divorces, betrayals, and countless scandals. Yet somehow, through every storm, they have managed to survive. But the world has changed. The old walls of privacy that once protected them have crumbled in the age of social media and relentless digital curiosity. Secrets no longer stay buried, not when every whisper becomes a trending topic within minutes. And this particular revelation, if it were to come out, could be far more damaging than anyone dares to admit aloud. Those conflicts were pushed. It's a direct challenge to the foundation of trust and bloodline that defines the monarchy itself. For centuries, lineage has been everything. Titles, inheritance, and power all flow through it. But if Beatrix's paternity were to come into question, it wouldn't only shatter personal lives. It could destabilize an entire royal narrative carefully crafted over decades. After King Charles's recent health concerns and the ongoing rift with Prince Harry and Meghan, there are new bombshell claims today from royal insiders who say King Charles's cancer is incurable. The monarchy has been struggling to restore its image as a modern united family. The public had just begun to soften toward them again, especially with the younger royals taking on more visible, relatable roles. The last thing Buckingham Palace needs is another crisis that could reopen wounds they've fought to heal. Yet behind the glittering facade, there's panic, not just for reputation, but for what this means to those personally involved. Because, at its heart, this isn't a story about royalty. It's a story about humanity. Princess Beatrice, despite her royal title, is a daughter, a wife, and a mother. To imagine her questioning her own identity under the blinding glare of global attention is deeply unsettling. It reminds everyone watching that beneath the crowns, these are real people. People who hurt, who love, who long for the truth just like anyone else. Reports suggest that palace aides have held multiple closed-door discussions on how to handle the situation. Some argue for a firm denial, believing that silence would only feed the flames. Others think Beatrice should speak directly to the public, not as a royal, but as a woman seeking answers. Yet, every possible move carries risk. A denial could backfire if evidence surfaces. A confession could lead to public sympathy, yes, but also irreparable damage to the royal name. Still, there's one truth that everyone inside those palace walls understands. This story is no longer just about DNA or gossip. It's about legacy, love, and the painful cost of secrets kept too long. Whether the palace acts or remains silent, the outcome will shape how history remembers not only Beatrice, but the royal family itself, not as a flawless institution, but as one more family fighting to hold itself together in the harsh light of truth, the emotional confrontation. Insiders say the hardest moment wasn't the media pressure or the endless phone calls from royal advisors. It was the quiet confrontation between mother and daughter. After weeks of whispers and sleepless nights, Princess Beatrice finally asked the question she had been avoiding. The question that had haunted her since the anonymous letter arrived. The air in the room was heavy, almost suffocating. As she sat across from her mother, Sarah Ferguson, Fergie, who had spent decades shielding her daughters from the mistakes of her youth, immediately knew what was coming. Those who know the Duchess say her eyes filled with tears even before Beatrice spoke. The room was still, except for the ticking of an old clock, the kind of silence that feels louder than words. Beatrix's voice reportedly trembled when she asked, "Is it true, Mom?" It wasn't an accusation. It wasn't anger. It was heartbreak. It was the voice of a daughter searching for something solid to hold on to when her entire sense of identity was slipping away. What followed wasn't a royal discussion. It was deeply human. No advisors, no cameras, no carefully rehearsed statements. Just two women bound by love sitting in the fragile truth of their relationship. Witnesses close to the family said it was one of the most emotional moments ever seen between a royal mother and her child. Fergie reportedly wept as she tried to explain that life inside the royal world wasn't always black and white. "She brought me into the royal family, right, and so she's just will always be not just anything. She'll always be in my heart." That sometimes silence was the only form of protection she had left. She spoke of mistakes, inconvenience, where there's Reggie's actuar a door, and impossible choices of how love, especially a mother's love, often comes with heavy consequences. But she stopped short of confirming or denying anything. It wasn't an admission, and it wasn't a lie. It was something in between a desperate plea for understanding. For Beatrice, that gray area hurt the most. The truth she had uncovered didn't make her mother guilty. It made her human, flawed, emotional, and heart-breakingly real. And in that moment, surrounded by decades of royal history and silence, Beatrice realized that no crown, no title, and no bloodline could ever protect a mother's heart from breaking, especially when it's her own child asking why. What happens now? Today, the royal family remains tight-lipped. There's been no official statement, no public acknowledgement of any DNA results, but the world is watching closely. Experts say this situation could force Buckingham Palace to rethink how it handles personal scandals in the future. Gone are the days when secrets could be quietly erased. In the digital age, every whisper finds its way online. As for Beatrice, those close to her say she's focusing on her marriage to Edoardo Mapelli Mosey and her young family. She's finding strength in motherhood and in the idea that your DNA might tell your story, but it doesn't define your soul. She's also reportedly taken comfort from her grandmother's old words, "Duty is not about blood, it's about heart." Maybe that's what she's holding on to now. The belief that who we love and who we become matters more than where we came from. So, could the DNA truth about Princess Beatrice change royal history forever? Or will it be quietly buried like so many secrets before it? No matter how the palace chooses to handle it, one thing is certain. Beatrix's story has touched millions. It reminds us that behind every crown is a person longing for truth, belonging, and peace. For Beatrice, the tears shed weren't just from shock. They were from realization. The realization that the life she's lived, the people she's loved, and the truth she's uncovered are all part of her journey. As the world waits for answers, her silence speaks louder than any royal announcement ever could. Maybe some truths aren't meant to destroy. Maybe they're meant to set you free. What do you think? Is this the beginning of a royal reckoning, or just another secret that will fade into the shadows of history?